he donated to a hospital and found her name on the wall. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Ethan Cole stood beneath the glittering lights of St. Mercy Hospital's new wing, the sound of applause fading as the ribbon was cut. Cameras flashed, capturing the billionaire who had just donated $10 million to fund its expansion. He smiled for the pictures, but his eyes lingered on the marble wall to his right, the one engraved with names of those who had once served the hospital. He was not expecting to find hers there. Dr. Maya Nguyen. The name hit him like a pulse beneath his ribs. 2 years ago, that name had belonged to the woman who once saved his life and disappeared before he could thank her. Tonight, it gleamed in gold letters under the section that read, "In honor of outstanding service." For a moment, the noise around him faded. He remembered the sterile smell of antiseptic, the bright ceiling lights after the crash, and a quiet voice saying, "You are safe, Mr. Cole. Just breathe." He had never forgotten that voice. Back then, he was broken in more ways than one: physically from the accident, emotionally from a family that only measured worth in dollars. He had recovered, rebuilt his empire, and sworn that gratitude was just a weakness. But standing there now, seeing her name again, something inside him shifted. When the ceremony ended, Ethan excused himself from the board members, loosened his tie, and walked down the hallway alone. The plaque was cooler to the touch than he expected, smooth and heavy with memory. "Maya Nguyen," he whispered. "Where did you go?" He did not notice the footsteps behind him until a soft, steady voice spoke. "She still works here," a nurse said. "At least, she did until last month. She left after, well, a disagreement with the administration." Ethan turned, his pulse quickening. "Do you know where she went?" The nurse hesitated, studying him carefully. "You are Mr. Cole, right? The donor?" He nodded. "All I know is she left to run a community clinic downtown. She said she was done serving people who only cared about appearances." Her words stung more than she could have imagined. Appearances, that was the world Ethan lived in. Contracts, mergers, photo ops. Everything for show. He stood silent for a moment, then smiled faintly, as if the universe had just handed him a challenge. Later that night, back in his penthouse overlooking the city, he stared at the reflection of the hospital lights flickering across the skyline. His assistant's message blinked on his phone: "Reminder, your father's board meeting at 9 a.m. Inheritance clause marriage condition still unresolved." Ethan exhaled sharply. Marriage. The one condition that could decide whether he kept the company or lost everything. His father's final demand: settle down or surrender control. He looked again at the hospital pamphlet resting on the table, at the name he could not stop thinking about. Dr. Maya Nguyen. A woman who valued kindness over reputation. A woman who might just save him again, but this time, not from death, but from the emptiness of his own life. Outside, thunder rolled over Manhattan. Ethan picked up his phone and murmured to himself, "If I am going to marry for appearance, maybe this time, it should mean something real." The city lights shimmered in his eyes, and for the first time in years, the thought of a contract made his heart race for a different reason. Voiceover script: the next morning, the rain had not stopped. Gray clouds hung low over Manhattan, and the city looked like it was holding its breath. Ethan Cole sat in the back of his car, the hum of the engine soft beneath the sound of water streaking down the windows. His assistant, Clara, spoke from the front seat, scrolling through her tablet. "Sir, you have 3 meetings today. The first one with the foundation board in an hour, then the press conference, and finally." Ethan cut her off quietly. "Cancel the first 2. Clara turned, startled. "Cancel? But the board expects you." Ethan's eyes stayed on the window. "They will survive one morning without me." He leaned back, his expression unreadable. We are going somewhere else. 40 minutes later, his car stopped in front of a narrow brick building in the Lower East Side. The sign above the door read, Hope Community Clinic. It was small, faded, and surrounded by scaffolding. He stepped out, rain hitting his expensive shoes, and stared at the entrance. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with the faint scent of disinfectant drifting from inside. A volunteer recognized him immediately. Mr. Cole? You are the man from the hospital gala, right? Ethan nodded politely. I am looking for Dr. Maya Nguyen. The young man hesitated. She is not here today, sir. She is at a home visit. But she usually returns around noon. Ethan checked his watch. Then I will wait. He sat on a worn bench in the hallway, the sound of children coughing echoing faintly through the thin walls. He watched nurses move quickly between rooms, their faces tired but focused. It was a world completely different from his glass towers and marble floors. Here, every glance carried urgency, every word mattered. Around noon, the front door opened, and a woman walked in with rain on her hair and a clipboard in her hand. Maya Nguyen looked almost exactly as he remembered, composed, gentle, purposeful. But there was something new in her eyes' distance. She did not see him at first. She was busy handing a prescription to a nurse when her gaze caught the figure waiting near the door. Her breath hitched. Ethan Cole, she said, barely above a whisper. He stood slowly, his voice steady. It has been a long time, Dr. Nguyen. The hallway seemed to shrink around them. The nurses exchanged glances, whispering softly. Maya crossed her arms. What are you doing here? I thought you lived in a different world now. Ethan's lips curved in a faint smile. Maybe that is why I came. To find someone who reminds me what the real one looks like. She frowned. If this is about publicity, you are wasting your time. We do not take photos here. Ethan shook his head. It is not about that. I saw your name on the hospital wall. You disappeared without a word. Maya's voice tightened. Because I did not belong there anymore. They cared more about investors than patients. You should understand that better than anyone. He nodded slowly. I do. There was a pause, the kind that carries the weight of unspoken years. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded document. This is not a business proposal, he said softly. But I need your help. Her eyes narrowed. With what? Ethan looked straight at her. My father's will requires me to marry before the end of this month, or I lose control of the company. I need someone who can keep up appearances, someone I can trust not to use me. The disbelief on her face was almost painful. You are asking me to marry you? Not marry me. Pretend, he said carefully. For 30 days. I will donate to this clinic enough to keep it running for the next 5 years. In return, you help me through this 1 month. Maya stared at him, her pulse thudding. That is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. Ethan's expression softened, almost pleading. Maybe. But you once saved my life, Maya. I am asking you to save my future. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass like a heartbeat. Finally, she whispered, if I say yes, it is not for you. It is for them. She nodded toward the patients waiting in the hallway. Ethan's voice dropped to a near whisper. That is all I could hope for. For the first time in years, he smiled, not the polished smile of a CEO, but something real, almost human. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time, it sounded less like a warning and more like a beginning. The next day, Maya sat in Ethan Cole's office, a room of glass and silence high above the city. The skyline stretched endlessly behind him, but the air between them felt closer, tighter, filled with unspoken tension. On the polished desk lay a single folder marked with gold letters, marriage contract. Maya stared at it, her fingers tightening around the cup of coffee she had barely touched. You actually went through with it, she said quietly. Ethan looked up from his laptop. I keep my word. He gestured toward the document. Read it. Every term, every condition. There will be no surprises. She opened the folder, scanning through the pages. The first clause was simple duration 30 days. The second appearances attend public and family events as Mrs. Cole. The third confidentiality no discussion of the agreement to anyone. The fourth no intimacy, no expectations beyond presentation. The fifth a clause that made her pause. What does this mean? She asked. In case either party develops genuine feelings, the contract can be terminated early by mutual consent. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his eyes unreadable. I do not like pretending more than I have to. Maya gave a short laugh, humorless. You think emotions can be written into legal language? I think it is safer when they are, he replied. She closed the folder. Fine. I will sign it. But I want one clause of my own. Name it. No lies outside this contract. If anyone asks, we are married because we believe in each other. I will not pretend for greed or power. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. They both signed. The sound of the pen scratching the paper felt final, binding. Ethan extended his hand, and she shook it briefly, the contact quick but electric. You will move into my penthouse tomorrow, he said matter-of-factly. The press will not question it if we live together. Your penthouse, she repeated. It is temporary, he said, avoiding her gaze. There is a room overlooking the river. I thought you might prefer that view. Maya smiled faintly. You thought about that? I noticed details, he said softly. The next day unfolded like a dream she could not wake from. A sleek car picked her up outside the clinic. When she stepped into Ethan's world, it was like stepping into another universe. Mirrors, marble, and quiet efficiency. His assistant Clara gave her a tour of the penthouse, explaining schedules, events, and the press arrangements. Maya listened, numb, still wondering how she had agreed to this. That evening, Ethan returned from a meeting, his tie loosened, his expression tired. He found her in the kitchen, wearing a simple gray sweater and making tea. For a moment, the image startled him. No one had used this kitchen in years. I did not know you could cook, he said lightly. I am a doctor, she replied. I can do a lot of things that do not pay well. He chuckled under his breath. Touché. There was an awkward silence before she asked, do your parents know? Ethan's smile faded. My father passed away 6 months ago. My stepbrother and the board handle everything now. Maya nodded, sensing the wound beneath his calm. Then this marriage is to keep them from taking what he built? To keep them from destroying it, he corrected. My father and I never agreed on much, but the company was his legacy. I will not let greed tear it apart. Maya studied him for a long moment. You know money cannot fill the emptiness you are trying to protect. He met her eyes. No, but it can buy time to figure out what will. The night deepened outside, the city lights flickering like a sea of restless stars. As she turned to leave, Ethan called softly, Maya. She paused at the doorway. Thank you for doing this. She nodded once. Do not thank me yet. You may regret it. When she left the room, Ethan stood alone, staring at the signed contract on his desk. For a man who had built his empire on certainty, he had never felt more uncertain in his life. By the end of the week, Maya's life no longer felt like her own. Every morning began with cameras waiting outside the building, every evening ended with the echo of her heels on marble floors that still felt too polished for someone like her. The tabloids called her, the mystery bride of Ethan Cole. The staff whispered politely, unsure whether to treat her as a guest or a queen. She hated both. Ethan, on the other hand, moved through it all with calm precision. He had turned their arrangement into a carefully orchestrated performance. He briefed her before every event, every public appearance. "Remember," he would say, adjusting his cufflinks, "we are not trying to convince the world that we are in love. We are showing them we respect each other. It is more believable that way." And yet, respect was exactly what began to unravel him. The more time he spent around her, the more he realized she never tried to impress anyone. At the first charity dinner they attended together, Maya wore a simple black dress, no diamonds, no embellishments. The moment she entered the hall, the room hushed. Her quiet confidence drew attention more than any luxury could. Ethan watched from across the table as she smiled at a nurse from the foundation and listened to her story about the hospital's struggles. When Maya spoke about her clinic and her patients, people leaned in. Her words had gravity. Even the most cynical donors found themselves nodding. Ethan had faced boardrooms, investors, and politicians, but he had never seen a crowd fall silent for someone who did not demand it. Later, in the car, he said softly, "You were incredible tonight." She looked out the window. "I was honest. That tends to surprise people." He smiled faintly. "It surprised me." The days turned into a rhythm of appearances and rehearsed affection. A hand on her back as they exited limousines, a smile exchanged across a crowded table. To everyone watching, they were the perfect couple. But inside the penthouse, the air between them was quieter, more real. Sometimes they would cross paths late at night, she in her robe, carrying files from the clinic, he with a glass of whiskey, reading reports. Those were the moments when neither of them had to pretend. One night, as she passed the study, she stopped. Ethan was sitting at the piano, his hands hovering over the keys. "I did not know you played," she said. He looked up, startled. "Not anymore. My mother taught me." She said music was a way to remember what peace feels like. Maya walked closer. "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," he said quietly. "She died when I was 12. A silence settled, gentle but heavy. Then she smiled faintly. "Play something. For her." He hesitated, then pressed a single key. The sound was soft, hesitant, then another followed, forming a slow, broken melody. Maya leaned against the doorway, watching the man she thought was all marble and steel reveal something fragile beneath. When the last note faded, she whispered, "That did not sound like someone pretending." He met her eyes, and for a moment, there was no contract, no business, just two people who had forgotten why they needed rules. The next morning, the illusion broke. Clara arrived early with news. "The media found your marriage certificate, but they are questioning the timing. They think it was too sudden." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we give them what they want to see. Schedule the next gala for tomorrow night. Full press coverage." Maya frowned. "You mean to parade this in front of them?" "I mean to control the narrative," he said sharply. She stepped closer, her voice firm. "If you treat this like a performance, it will eventually feel like one." He looked at her, something fierce and unspoken in his gaze. "Then tell me how to make it real." She froze, unable to answer. Outside, flashes from paparazzi cameras flickered through the curtains like lightning. Somewhere deep inside, she wondered if the storm had already begun. The following evening, the charity gala was held in one of the city's most luxurious hotels. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers, golden light, and the hum of wealth and gossip. Ethan Cole stood beside Maya, their hands intertwined for the cameras as flashes exploded around them. She wore a dark green gown that flowed like water, simple but breathtaking. Ethan's hand tightened slightly around hers as they stepped onto the red carpet. "Just stay close," he murmured. "We smile, we answer politely, and we leave together. That is all." She nodded, her jaw firm, but her eyes flicked nervously toward the reporters waiting like hawks. Inside, the gala was louder than she expected: music, laughter, clinking glasses. She could feel every pair of eyes on them. To them, she was the miracle story, the doctor from nowhere who had captured the city's most eligible billionaire. Ethan greeted donors with practiced charm, but his attention never drifted far from her. He watched how she spoke to the staff, how she thanked every server, how she smiled with genuine warmth. When a board member made a cruel joke about Cinderella in scrubs, Ethan's expression darkened. "Careful," he said coldly. "She earned her place here more than most of us ever will." The man stammered an apology and walked away, red-faced. Maya whispered, "You did not have to do that." "Yes," Ethan replied quietly. "I did." As the night went on, Maya was asked to join a small panel of speakers representing the hospital's charitable partners. When the host invited her on stage, she hesitated, but Ethan gave a small nod of encouragement. She stepped up to the microphone, the room settling into silence. "When I became a doctor," she began, "I thought saving lives would be the hardest part. But it turns out, the hardest part is convincing the world that kindness still matters. Every patient who walks into a free clinic is a reminder that compassion is worth more than any fortune." Her voice wavered slightly at the end, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Then applause erupted, long, genuine, and overwhelming. Ethan felt something in his chest shift, a crack forming in the walls he had built around himself. After the event, as they stood on the hotel balcony overlooking the city, the noise of the party fading behind them, Ethan said quietly, "You did not just impress them. You reminded them what this is supposed to be about." She smiled. "It is supposed to be about people, not power." He nodded, eyes fixed on the skyline. "You make that sound so simple." "Maybe it is," she said softly. "Maybe you just forgot." For a moment, the air between them felt different, warmer, unguarded. But before either could speak again, a voice interrupted. It was Nathan Cole, Ethan's stepbrother, his expression sharp with a smirk that did not reach his eyes. "Well, well. The happy couple." Ethan's jaw tensed. "Nathan." Nathan sipped his drink, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "You move fast, brother." A sudden marriage, a contract conveniently signed just before the inheritance deadline. What would the board say if they knew the truth? Maya's breath caught. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low but dangerous. "Watch your words." Nathan leaned in. "I am only saying what everyone will soon find out. You cannot fake love forever." Then he turned and walked away, leaving silence behind him. Maya looked at Ethan, fear flickering in her eyes. "Is he serious? He knows?" Ethan nodded grimly. "He suspects. And he will use it." She clenched her hands. "Then what do we do?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "We show them something real enough to believe in." The city lights reflected in his eyes as he said it, and for the first time, Maya wondered if the line between pretending and truth had already disappeared. She turned back toward the ballroom, her heart racing. Somewhere inside, she knew this contract had already begun to feel like something far more dangerous, something real. That night, the rain returned as if the sky itself had chosen to echo their turmoil. Back at the penthouse, Maya slipped off her heels and leaned against the window, watching the lightning trace silver lines across the city. Ethan entered moments later, removing his tie, his shoulders heavy with the weight of what Nathan had said. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence was louder than any argument. Finally, Maya broke it. "You knew this would happen," she said quietly. "You knew someone would find out." Ethan nodded. "Nathan has been waiting for a reason to destroy me since the day my father signed that will." She turned toward him, her voice soft but steady. "Then why tell me to pretend everything is fine? Why keep fighting a game that only hurts you?" Ethan's gaze met hers, and for once, he did not look like the untouchable billionaire the world admired. He looked human, tired, vulnerable. "Because if I stop now, I lose everything he built and everything I thought I was." Maya walked closer, folding her arms. "And what if you are fighting the wrong battle?" He blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" You are trying to protect your father's legacy, she said, but maybe the real legacy is not the company, Ethan. Maybe it is the man you choose to be now. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He turned away, gripping the edge of the table. You talk about it like it is simple. It is not simple, she replied. It is just honest. The thunder outside rolled closer, shaking the windows. Ethan looked back at her, the stormlight flickering across his face. You really believe honesty can save us? It saved you once, she said quietly. At that hospital, when you thought you would not make it. You looked at me and said, do not let me die a man who never did anything real. You survived that night. Maybe it is time to live like it mattered. He froze, remembering every detail she spoke of, the pain, the fear, her steady voice guiding him through it. Slowly, his hand reached for hers, hesitant, almost afraid. You remember everything, he murmured. Some things are impossible to forget, she said. Their hands stayed joined longer than they should have. The world outside rumbled again, and Ethan exhaled. Maya, he said softly, I do not know how to separate what is pretend from what is real anymore. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. Maybe you do not need to. Maybe you just stop pretending. Before either could say another word, Clara entered with urgent news. Mr. Cole, the press has picked up your stepbrother's statements. They are calling it a fraud marriage. Reporters are camped outside. The board has scheduled an emergency vote tomorrow. Ethan's grip on Maya's hand tightened. Of course they have, he muttered. Clara's expression softened. If you want to avoid the cameras, we can move you both to the private residence in the Hamptons. He shook his head. No. If we run now, it looks like guilt. We face it. When Clara left, Maya turned to him. You cannot fight this alone. Ethan's voice was low. Then stay. Stay and show them who we are. She hesitated, then nodded. All right. But if we do this, we do it honestly. No more scripts, no more lines. Ethan's lips curved in a faint, weary smile. Agreed. Later that night, when she returned to her room, Maya found a single white envelope on her bedside table. Inside was a note written in his precise handwriting, "Thank you for reminding me who I was before the world decided who I should be." She read it twice, her heart tightening in her chest. Outside, the rain eased, the storm fading into silence. In the calm that followed, one truth settled in her mind: this contract had started as a lie, but somewhere along the way, it had begun to feel like the most honest thing in her life. The next morning, the sky over Manhattan was pale and tense, as if the city itself was waiting for a verdict. The news had already spread. Every headline carried Ethan Cole's name, paired with the words fraud, contract, and scandal. Maya stood by the penthouse window, watching the swarm of reporters below. Ethan entered the room, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression unreadable. I understand, he said flatly. Tell the board I will attend the meeting. When he hung up, he met her eyes. It is happening today. Maya nodded, her voice steady. Then we face it together. He studied her, that quiet strength he had come to rely on reflected in her gaze. You do not have to do this, he said. You could walk away now, and no one would blame you. If I walk away, she replied, it means everything we tried to stand for was fake. I will not let that be the truth. At noon, they arrived at the Cole Enterprises headquarters. Cameras flashed like lightning as they walked through the lobby. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Maya's back, steady but protective. The boardroom was filled with tension: men and women in tailored suits, Nathan sitting at the far end with a smug grin. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Cole, these accusations are serious. Your stepbrother claims your marriage was a business transaction designed to secure your inheritance. Do you deny it? Ethan looked around the table, his voice calm. I will not deny that I made a mistake. But not the one you think. A murmur rippled through the room. He continued, when I married Maya, I thought it was a means to an end. I thought appearances could save this company. But what I found was something real. She reminded me why this business was built to serve, not to impress. Nathan scoffed. Touching speech. Do you have proof? Ethan's gaze hardened. Yes. He opened a folder, sliding several documents across the table. Donations, community programs, and medical funding all under her guidance. The projects that brought us back into public trust began with her ideas, not mine. Maya stood beside him, speaking for the first time. I did not marry him for money. I did it because I believed his company could still do good if led with purpose. The chairman leaned back, eyes narrowed. So you admit it began as an arrangement? Yes, Maya said firmly. But it became something worth fighting for. The room fell silent. Nathan's smirk faded. He rose abruptly. This is ridiculous. You are all being manipulated by sentiment. Ethan turned toward him, his voice sharp as glass. No, Nathan. It is you who never understood what leadership means. Father left this company to someone who could carry its heart, not its ego. The board members exchanged glances, murmuring quietly. When the chairman finally spoke, his tone was measured. The board will deliberate. Until then, the company remains under Mr. Cole's control. Nathan stormed out, the door slamming behind him. As silence returned, Maya let out a slow breath. Ethan turned to her, a faint, weary smile forming. You did not have to speak for me. I was not speaking for you, she said softly. I was speaking for the truth. For the first time, Ethan realized the woman standing beside him was no longer part of a deal. She was his partner in every sense of the word. Outside, the storm had cleared. The city was quiet, but inside his chest, a different kind of thunder still echoed. That evening, the city lights reflected off the wet streets as if New York itself was exhaling after a storm. Ethan and Maya returned to the penthouse in silence. The board meeting was over, but the echoes of Nathan's accusations still lingered in the air. Ethan loosened his tie and dropped it on the counter, his expression unreadable. Maya set down her coat, her voice quiet but firm. You did the right thing today. He gave a tired laugh. Right and easy have never meant the same thing. She walked closer, searching his face. What happens now? Now, he said, looking toward the window, I wait for them to decide if I am worthy of my own name. Maya shook her head. You do not need their approval to prove who you are. He turned to her, his eyes soft but heavy. Maybe, but it would mean something to know I built more than just walls. For a moment, the two of them stood in the dim glow of the city, the noise of the world muted behind glass. Then his phone buzzed with an alert. The press conference had been scheduled for the next morning. Ethan stared at the screen, then looked back at her. If I am going down, I am going down telling the truth. You mean to confess? Maya asked, startled. Yes, he said simply. But not the way they expect. It is time they see who you really are. The next day, the hospital auditorium was packed with reporters and flashing cameras. Ethan walked to the podium, Maya standing beside him. His voice was calm, measured, but carried the weight of conviction. You have all heard the rumors, he began. About my marriage, my inheritance, my motives. Some of them are true. I did ask Dr. Mayangwin to marry me under a contract. I did it out of desperation. But what began as a business arrangement became something I never expected real. Murmurs filled the room, but he continued. She taught me that legacy is not built on money or power. It is built on compassion. Because of her, we have funded new clinics, reopened hospitals, and saved lives that profit alone could never reach. He turned toward Maya, his tone softening. So if you want to accuse me of something, accuse me of learning to care. Of falling in love with a woman whose integrity made me want to be better. The room fell silent, every camera fixed on them. Maya's eyes shimmered with disbelief and emotion. She whispered, "Ethan, you did not have to," he interrupted gently. "Yes, I did." Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps filled the auditorium. "When I first met you," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple ring, "it was about appearances. But everything that followed was the truth I never had the courage to face. So here, in front of everyone, no contracts, no conditions, just me asking you if we can start over. For real this time." The world seemed to hold its breath. Maya stared at him, her hands trembling slightly. The flashes of cameras painted the moment in bursts of white light. Finally, she smiled through tears. "Yes," she whispered. "But only if you promise no more deals." He smiled back, slipping the ring onto her finger. "No more deals," he said softly. The crowd erupted into applause, but for Ethan and Maya, the noise faded away. All that remained was the quiet certainty between them that truth had finally found its way home. Weeks passed, and the noise of the scandal slowly faded. The media found new stories, the board accepted Ethan's public confession, and for the first time in years, Cole Enterprises became known not for its power but for its humanity. Ethan and Maya married quietly at the hospital where they first met, surrounded not by reporters or executives but by nurses, patients, and children whose lives their work had changed. The ceremony was simple, sunlight streaming through tall windows, the smell of fresh flowers mixing with the faint scent of antiseptic. When the officiant asked if he took her as his wife, Ethan looked at Maya and said, "For the first time, this is not about saving anyone. It is about choosing to live honestly." She smiled, her voice steady. "Then I choose you, not because I need to, but because I want to." Applause filled the small chapel, soft and heartfelt. Later, as they walked through the new hospital wing, the golden plaque on the wall caught Maya's eye. It read the Colwyn Healing Center, dedicated to kindness in action. Ethan paused beside it, his fingers brushing over the engraved letters. "It is strange," he said quietly. "The first time I saw your name on a wall, it was the moment I realized what was missing in my life. Now, seeing it beside mine feels like the answer." Maya leaned against him, smiling. "It was never about the names, Ethan. It was about what we built together." He nodded, his voice soft. "You are right. For once, it is not about legacy or reputation. It is about love that outlasts both." They continued walking down the hallway, stopping to greet patients and staff. Children waved, nurses smiled, and in every glance there was a quiet respect the kind earned, not inherited. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but inside those walls, time seemed to slow. Ethan turned to Maya, his expression calm, content. "You know," he said, "I used to think leadership meant control. Now I think it means care." Maya reached for his hand. "And I used to think love was sacrifice. But it turns out, it is partnership." They stepped out into the sunlight, their hands entwined. The world outside was still imperfect, but somehow, it felt lighter. Ethan looked back one last time at the building that now bore their names and whispered, "Thank you for saving me twice, once from death, and once from myself." Maya squeezed his hand. "We saved each other." The wind caught her hair as they walked toward the car, laughter soft against the hum of the city. For them, the story had come full circle from a contract written in desperation to a life built on truth. And as the doors closed behind them, the golden letters on the hospital wall gleamed in the afternoon light, a reminder that love, when chosen freely, is the truest legacy of all.